My guest at this time is Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Agriculture Committees, both of which will play into our discussion today of the crisis at the southern border. And Congressman, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Greg, for having me on. Also a member of the House Freedom Caucus.
That plays into this as well, I'm sure. So the big issue right now in terms of the border crisis is the competing funding bills, one from the democratically controlled House and the Republican-controlled Senate. The Senate today voted down the House bill, but passed one of its own worth $4.6 billion. It easily passed 84-8. So let's start with the House bill. What was wrong with the one the Democrats passed?
Oh, the one the Democrats passed. Where do you want me to start? I mean, it limits the authority of the Department of Homeland Security to surge the employees at the border. It cuts overtime. Get this, it cuts overtime payments for the exhausted officers that we have working overtime. They want to cut this, and these are the very people doing the, what we have hired them to do. Provides no funds to investigate human trafficking, smuggling of drugs, or the human trafficking of children across the border, which we know is just gone unchecked. It provides no funds for the Department of Defense. No funds are included to support active duty National Guard military personnel who are deployed there. And the list just goes on. Does not provide additional funds for the Department of Justice, for immigration judges, teams, courtrooms, equipment, and it ties the president's hands on aid for Central America. And it was just messaging, because they didn't want to be complicit at all of helping Donald Trump solve this, which is ludicrous. And I think the Senate bill was a bipartisan bill that's going to remedy a lot of these things.
So you're happy with the Senate bill?
I haven't seen it in its entirety yet. Our team's getting ready to go through it. It's definitely an improvement over this. And, I have to give a shout-out to Chip Roy and the Freedom Caucus, because Chip was the one that blocked that disaster payment back when we were on that break. And since then, we've been calling for roll call votes and just highlighting so much of this stuff. And I think that brought a lot of people's awareness of how bad the Democrat bill was in not solving this problem. And so this was something that was a political move on our part, and we were happy to participate in that.
Do you think these bills can get reconciled?
Yeah, I do. That's where the sausage making goes to work, and we'll just see what flavor it comes out. But it'll be better than what the Democrats sent over there. And again, the border crisis is not a political crisis. Well, it is a political crisis because Congress has failed to act. But we should not be Republicans or Democrats. We should come together to have a border security bill that solves this problem. In fact, we talked last night. I was talking to Hal Rogers. If we were to do what we're supposed to with border security and enforce the laws on the books, we wouldn't have a crisis down there.
It was just a few months ago that we had a government shutdown because there was an impasse between the president and allies of his. I'm guessing you were one of them in the House of Representatives and some in the Senate over funding of the wall. And ultimately, the president largely relented on that. But one of the arguments we heard from Democrats at the time, though, was that this was a politically manufactured issue by the president. It was a politically manufactured crisis to be dealt with. Now they're the ones suddenly deciding that there is a crisis at the southern border. So what's behind the sudden change of heart here?
Well, I think reality, they finally admitted to that. And I think they're hearing from their constituents. The political pressure on them is one that would change them the most. And I think it goes back to, if you go back to, months ago, Mike Rogers, the Republican offered, it was 3056, which was legislation that would give the administration, it was $3.3 billion for humanitarian assistance, $1.18 billion for operational support, including transportation, resources, combat human smuggling, trafficking, and the drugs coming across, and $178 million for technology. 17 times the House Democrats refused that legislation. And I think they heard loud and clear from their constituents just by the reality of what's going on there. And the news, some of the news channels do a very accurate job of portraying the reality of what's going in down there. One of the most egregious things I see is they have what they call rape trees at the border, where they tie up young girls and boys, and they're abusing these. The drug cartels are, and for the Democrats to deny that and say we're not going to fund this, to me it's unconscionable. And I think enough of that has gotten out to where these people have decided, you know what, we've got to come together.
We're talking with Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho, and Congressman, as you well know, we're now officially in 2020 debate season, and we've got two Democratic presidential candidates, at least by my count, who want to decriminalize illegally entering the United States, Julian Castro and Elizabeth Warren, and you've also got former Congressman O'Rourke, who wants to tear down existing wall, not build additional walls. So are they the fringe of the Democrats from what you can tell, or are they the mainstream?
I think they're saying whatever they can to get elected, and that's exactly why they cannot be elected. You know, common sense just dictates to have a secure nation, you've got to have secure borders. These people are working the opposite direction, and I don't know who they're appeasing. My job is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Theirs is to open the border, and that is it's just not good business. I mean, if they feel that way, if they had a business, you'd let everybody shoplift. You know, just take whatever you want. You know, it's free. That's dangerous. Their ideology is dangerous for the survival of this country and uphold the integrity of this country. And it's scary that we have presidential candidates speaking this.
Congressman, I know in a few weeks you're planning to introduce some immigration-related legislation. Is it too early to give us a preview of that, or can you let us know what you're thinking there?
No, Greg, it's I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about that. It's not immigration, because if we talk immigration up here, it's like Moses parting the seas. You know, one side goes one way, one goes the other way. One gets accused of giving everybody amnesty, and the other one gets accused of deportating. So we've changed the narrative. It's a guest worker program for the lower skilled, ag, hospitality, construction. Briefly on the ag side, it gives a portal for people to come into this country. They're pre-screened before they come in. A job is already available. Once they get accepted and approved by DHS, USDA would run this. They're here for 5 years at a time, and they can follow a crop around the United States. They can renew 4.5 years into it. There is no pathway to citizenship. It gives them the right to come here and work. They can also go back and forth to their host country. We're working with the countries of origin of these people so that they're verifying these people are who they are. And we also take that group of people that have come in illegally to where they can apply to this program. Background checks would be run. There will be a fee of $2,500. And then if they qualify for the program, they can enter into it. And the unique thing about our bill is you apply for a guest worker program for agriculture or hospitality or construction. You're indebted to that sector. So it's either you work agriculture for 5 years, and if you leave that one and get caught working in one of the other ones, you've broken your commitment, and so that permit gets removed. And this will keep people honest in the profession that they said they wanted to work in, and it would clear up. It would solve about 90% of our illegal immigration, and so we can fix immigration, but I'm focused on a guest worker program for ag, hospitality, and construction.
Last question, sir. You mentioned that every immigration-related bill either gets tagged as amnesty or deportation. There may be some on your side of this debate who suggest that just allowing them to stay at all amounts to some level of amnesty, even with the $2,500 penalty. What do you tell them?
Well, you know, we have had that debate, and it's like, all right, so let's get realistic here. Do you think you're going to deport everybody here that's here illegally? And nobody up here really thinks you're going to do that. Everybody's for legal immigration. The one thing I didn't say, for this bill to work, you have to have a secure border and you have to be enforcing the laws on the book. And we need the workforce in all three of those sectors. Florida's a big ag state, and we need migrant help here. The H-2A program would still work, where they're here 10 years or 10 months at a time. The way the current program is, they can stay here for 3 years on the H-2A program. Our program would say you're here on an H-2A visa, you're here for 10 months, then you have to go back home. This other bill will bring predictability and a secure workforce, one that's dependable for our producers, so that we can continue to have the low food costs that we have, or the other things that we have. And as far as amnesty, if somebody's willing to come in here and work in a sector and they have the right to go back and forth to their home host country, I don't see that as amnesty. I see it as something that we're doing to bolster our labor market in this country.
Congressman, the Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security will certainly be eager to see what the House and Senate can agree on in terms of emergency funding for right now, and we'll certainly be tracking your legislation as it gets introduced and advances in the coming weeks. Thanks very much for your time today.
Greg, have a great day, and say hi to those two daughters.
Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho, member of the Foreign Affairs and Agriculture Committees, also a member of the House Freedom Caucus. I'm Greg Columbus reporting for Radio America.